What started as a routine inspection at Riverside Animal Shelter turned into a nightmare when investigators discovered what was happening to Max, a 3-month-old German Shepherd puppy. The abuse he suffered at the hands of a trusted employee was heartbreaking, but what happened next restored our faith in humanity and justice. This is the incredible true story of a puppy's courage, the heroes who saved him, and how one man's cruelty led to his own downfall. Get ready for a journey that will break your heart, then heal it completely. Riverside Animal Shelter in Portland, Oregon, had always prided itself on being a beacon of hope for abandoned and stray animals. The facility, housed in a converted warehouse on the outskirts of the city, was home to dozens of dogs and cats waiting for their forever families. With its bright yellow walls, spacious kennels, and dedicated staff, it appeared to be everything an animal rescue should be. Max arrived at Riverside on a cold February morning, brought in by a good Samaritan who found him shivering in an alley behind a grocery store. At just 3 months old, the German Shepherd puppy was all ears and paws, with a coat of black and tan fur that promised the majestic beauty he would one day possess. His bright amber eyes held the innocent trust that only puppies seem to have, and despite his rough start in life, his tail wagged enthusiastically at anyone who approached his kennel. Dr. Sarah Chin, the shelter's head veterinarian, fell in love with Max immediately during his intake examination. "He's perfectly healthy," she told the intake coordinator, gently scratching behind the puppy's oversized ears. "Just malnourished and scared. With proper care and love, he'll make someone an incredible companion." Max was assigned to Kennel Block C, overseen by Marcus Webb, a 34-year-old employee who had worked at the shelter for 2 years. Webb was quiet and kept to himself, but his references had been solid when he was hired, and he seemed competent enough in his duties of feeding, cleaning, and basic animal care. The other staff members didn't know him well, but there had never been any obvious red flags. For the first week, Max seemed to be adjusting well to shelter life. He played eagerly with the toys volunteers brought him, wolfed down his meals with the enthusiasm typical of growing puppies, and charmed everyone who visited his kennel. Several potential adopters had already expressed interest in the adorable German Shepherd, and the staff was optimistic that he would find a home quickly. But something began to change in Max's second week at the shelter. The playful, energetic puppy who had greeted everyone with excitement started to withdraw. He stopped wagging his tail when people approached, and instead cowered in the back corner of his kennel. His appetite decreased dramatically, and he began exhibiting signs of anxiety that concerned Dr. Chin. "He seems terrified," noted Jessica Rodriguez, a volunteer who had been working with Max on basic training. "Yesterday he was learning to sit and shake hands. Today he won't even come near me. It's like he's a completely different dog." What the staff didn't know was that Marcus Webb had been taking Max out of his kennel during his overnight shifts, when the shelter was closed and no other employees were present. The security cameras in the kennel areas had mysteriously malfunctioned 2 weeks earlier, and Webb had volunteered to stay late to monitor the situation until they could be repaired. During these late-night sessions, Webb had been subjecting Max to treatment that would have horrified anyone who witnessed it. The puppy's innocent trust had been shattered by the very person who was supposed to protect him, and the psychological damage was becoming increasingly obvious to everyone at the shelter. Dr. Chin scheduled a follow-up examination for Max, concerned about his dramatic behavioral changes. As she approached his kennel, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Fresh bruising along the puppy's ribs, partially hidden by his thick coat. Max trembled uncontrollably during the examination, and when Dr. Chin tried to touch his hindquarters, he yelped in pain and fear. "This isn't normal anxiety," Dr. Chin murmured to herself, documenting every mark and injury she found. "Someone has been hurting this baby." As she finished her examination, Dr. Chin made a decision that would change everything. She was going to get to the bottom of what was happening to Max, no matter what it took. The innocent puppy deserved justice, and she was going to make sure he got it. Dr. Chin's discovery of Max's injury sent shockwaves through her system, but years of veterinary training had taught her to remain calm and methodical. She carefully photographed every bruise, every mark, and every sign of trauma on the young German Shepherd's body. Max trembled throughout the examination, his amber eyes wide with fear whenever she moved too quickly. "It's okay, baby," she whispered softly, her heart breaking as the puppy flinched away from her gentle touch. "No one's going to hurt you anymore. I promise." After completing her documentation, Dr. Chin faced a difficult decision. The evidence was clear. Max had been systematically abused, but she needed to be absolutely certain before making accusations that could destroy someone's life and career. She decided to set up a covert observation plan. That evening, Dr. Chin told the staff she would be staying late to catch up on paperwork, but her real intention was to monitor the kennel area. She positioned herself in the clinic's supply room, which had a clear view of Kennel Block C through a small window. At 11:47 p.m., long after the building should have been empty except for the overnight security guard, she saw Marcus Webb's flashlight beam moving through the kennel area. What Dr. Chin witnessed over the next hour would haunt her forever. Webb removed Max from his kennel and took him to a storage room where the security cameras couldn't reach. Though she couldn't see exactly what was happening, she could hear enough to know that Max was in distress. The puppy's frightened whimpers and yelps echoed through the quiet building, followed by Webb's angry, muffled voice. When Webb finally returned Max to his kennel 30 minutes later, the puppy was limping and refused to make eye contact with his abuser. Dr. Chin had seen enough. She spent the remainder of the night documenting everything she had witnessed and formulating a plan to protect Max and expose Webb's crimes. The next morning, Dr. Chin contacted Amanda Foster, the shelter's director, and requested an emergency meeting. Amanda, a compassionate woman in her 50s who had dedicated her life to animal welfare, was initially skeptical of such serious accusations against a staff member. Marcus has been here for 2 years without incident, Amanda said, reviewing Webb's personnel file. Are you absolutely certain about what you saw? Dr. Chin presented her evidence methodically. The photographs of Max's injuries, her detailed observations from the previous night, and the concerning pattern of Max's behavioral changes that coincided with Webb's overnight shifts. She also pointed out that the security camera malfunctions had occurred just before Max's personality transformation began. There's something else, Dr. Chin added, her voice heavy with concern. I've been reviewing our records, and 3 other dogs have shown similar behavioral changes over the past 6 months, all during periods when Marcus was working overnight shifts. I think Max isn't his first victim. Amanda's face grew pale as the implications became clear. What do you need from me? She asked without hesitation. We need to contact animal control and the police immediately, Dr. Chin replied. But first, we need to get Max away from Marcus and ensure the safety of all our animals. We also need to secretly repair those security cameras and gather more evidence. Amanda nodded grimly. Consider it done. I'll call Detective Williams at the Animal Cruelty Unit right now. Marcus is scheduled to work tonight, but he'll never get the chance to hurt another animal in this facility. As they prepared to set their plan in motion, both women looked toward Kennel Block C, where Max sat in the corner of his kennel, still too traumatized to play with the toys that had once brought him joy. Soon, they promised silently, justice would come for the innocent puppy who had suffered far more than any animal should ever have to endure. Detective Lisa Williams had seen her share of animal cruelty cases during her 8 years with Portland Police's Animal Crimes Unit, but something about Dr. Chen's phone call struck her as particularly urgent. Within 2 hours of Amanda's emergency meeting, Detective Williams was at Riverside Animal Shelter, reviewing the evidence and developing a plan to catch Marcus Webb in the act. We need irrefutable video evidence, Detective Williams explained to Dr. Chin and Amanda as they huddled in the director's office. What you've documented is compelling, but a good defense attorney could argue that Max's injuries came from other sources. We need to catch him actively abusing an animal. The detective's plan was methodical and thorough. First, she arranged for hidden cameras to be installed throughout the shelter by a specialized surveillance team, including infrared cameras that would capture clear footage even in complete darkness. The cameras were positioned to cover every blind spot where Webb might take animals without being seen. Meanwhile, Dr. Chin worked with a veterinary behaviorist to document Max's trauma responses more thoroughly. The specialist, Dr. Patricia Morgan, spent an hour with Max and confirmed what Dr. Chen had suspected. The puppy's behaviors were consistent with systematic physical and psychological abuse. This level of fear and submission doesn't develop overnight, Dr. Morgan explained, watching as Max cowered when she simply raised her hand to scratch her head. This puppy has been conditioned to expect pain from human interaction. The person responsible has been hurting him regularly for an extended period. To protect Max while gathering evidence, Dr. Chin arranged for the puppy to be transferred to a medical isolation kennel, claiming he needed treatment for a minor illness. This move would prevent Webb from accessing Max while still allowing the investigation to continue with other potential victims. Detective Williams also discovered troubling patterns in the shelter's records. Over the past 18 months, 7 dogs had been returned by adopters who reported aggressive or fearful behavior that hadn't been present during their initial visits. All 7 animals had been at the shelter during Webb's employment, and all had shown the same behavioral changes that Max was exhibiting. He's been flying under the radar, Detective Williams told Amanda. He chooses animals that are less likely to be immediately adopted: older dogs, larger breeds, animals with minor health issues. He knows these animals will be here longer, giving him more opportunities to abuse them. The most damning evidence came when Detective Williams reviewed Webb's background more thoroughly. His previous employment references, which had seemed solid during the hiring process, revealed a disturbing pattern when investigated more deeply. 2 previous employers had let Webb go quietly rather than pursue charges, hoping to avoid negative publicity for their organizations. He's done this before, Detective Williams confirmed. We're dealing with a serial animal abuser who has learned how to manipulate the system. As evening approached, everyone involved in the investigation felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. The newly installed cameras were active, and Webb was scheduled to begin his overnight shift at 10 p.m. Dr. Chin had volunteered to remain at the shelter under the pretense of monitoring a critical patient, while Detective Williams and her team positioned themselves in unmarked vehicles outside the building. "Tonight, we get justice for Max and every other animal he's hurt," Detective Williams said over the radio to her team. "This ends now." At 9:58 p.m., Marcus Webb's beat-up sedan pulled into the Riverside Animal Shelter parking lot. He had no idea that every step he was about to take would be recorded, and that his reign of terror over innocent animals was about to come to a devastating end. At 11:23 p.m., the hidden cameras captured everything. Marcus Webb, believing himself unobserved, removed a young pit bull named Luna from her kennel and led her to the same storage room where he had previously abused Max. What happened next was recorded in crystal-clear high-definition footage that would soon become the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Detective Williams, monitoring the live feed from her surveillance van, felt her stomach turn as she watched Webb's systematic cruelty unfold on her laptop screen. "Move in now," she commanded her team through her radio. "We have everything we need." The arrest was swift and decisive. As Webb emerged from the storage room, leaving Luna cowering and injured, he found himself face-to-face with Detective Williams and 3 uniformed officers. The shock on his face was immediately replaced by a calculating expression as he attempted to fabricate an explanation for his presence. "I was just checking on the animals," Webb stammered, but his words fell flat in the face of overwhelming evidence. Detective Williams had already watched the recorded footage of his abuse, and Luna's visible injuries corroborated every frame. "Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for animal cruelty in the first degree," Detective Williams announced, reading him his rights as officers placed him in handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." Webb's arrest sent shockwaves through the Portland animal welfare community. Local news stations picked up the story within hours, and social media exploded with outrage and support for the brave staff members who had exposed the abuse. The hashtag #JusticeForMax began trending as people shared Max's story and demanded accountability. Dr. Chin worked through the night treating Luna's fresh injuries while coordinating with veterinary specialists to develop rehabilitation plans for all the animals Webb had victimized. The footage from the hidden cameras had revealed the full scope of his cruelty. 8 different animals had been systematically abused over the course of 6 months. The legal proceedings moved quickly. District Attorney Jennifer Walsh, herself a devoted dog owner, personally took charge of the prosecution. The video evidence was so compelling that Webb's public defender advised him to accept a plea bargain, but Webb, arrogantly believing he could manipulate the legal system as he had manipulated his workplace, insisted on going to trial. "He made a critical mistake," DA Walsh explained to reporters. "The evidence against him is overwhelming, and his decision to reject our plea offer means he's facing the maximum possible sentence." The trial lasted only 3 days. The prosecution presented the video evidence, medical documentation of the animal's injuries, expert testimony from veterinary behaviorists, and emotional witness statements from shelter staff who had noticed the animal's behavioral changes. Webb's defense team had virtually nothing to work with. The evidence was too clear, too comprehensive, and too damning. Dr. Chen's testimony was particularly powerful. As she described finding Max's injuries and documenting the pattern of abuse, several jurors were visibly emotional. When the prosecution played the surveillance footage showing Webb's attacks on Luna, 2 jurors had to wipe away tears. The jury deliberated for only 47 minutes before returning with a unanimous guilty verdict on all charges: 8 counts of animal cruelty in the first degree, 8 counts of causing unnecessary suffering to animals, and 1 count of fraud for falsifying his employment application. Judge Patricia Morrison, known for her tough sentences in animal cruelty cases, showed no mercy during sentencing. "Mr. Webb," she said, looking directly at the defendant, You betrayed the trust of innocent animals who depended on you for care and protection. Your actions were systematic, deliberate, and utterly without justification. The sentence was exactly what advocates had hoped for. 4 years in state prison, followed by lifetime ban from working with animals. The day after Marcus Webb's sentencing, Riverside Animal Shelter felt like a completely different place. The oppressive atmosphere that had unknowingly settled over the facility during Webb's reign of terror was finally lifting, replaced by a renewed sense of hope and purpose. Dr. Chin arrived early that morning to check on Max, who had been transferred to a specialized rehabilitation kennel designed specifically for traumatized animals. Max's recovery had been slow but steady. 3 weeks after Webb's arrest, the young German Shepherd was finally beginning to show glimpses of the playful puppy he had been before the abuse. Dr. Chin had worked closely with Dr. Patricia Morgan, the veterinary behaviorist, to develop a comprehensive rehabilitation program that focused on rebuilding Max's trust in humans. Trust is like a delicate flower, Dr. Morgan explained to the shelter staff during a training session. Once it's been crushed, it takes patience, consistency, and unconditional love to help it bloom again. The rehabilitation process involved multiple dedicated volunteers who spent hours simply sitting near Max's kennel, reading books aloud or working on laptops, allowing him to gradually become comfortable with human presence again. Slowly, Max began to approach the kennel door when volunteers arrived, and eventually he started wagging his tail, tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Luna, the pit bull who had been Webb's final victim, was recovering even more quickly. Her injuries had been less severe, and her naturally resilient personality helped her bounce back with remarkable speed. Within 2 weeks of Webb's arrest, Luna was playing fetch and seeking belly rubs from the staff, showing no lasting trauma from her ordeal. The other animals Webb had abused were responding to their individual rehabilitation programs with varying degrees of success. Rusty, an elderly golden retriever who had been one of Webb's earliest victims, required the most intensive therapy, but even he was beginning to show improvement under the patient care of the shelter's enhanced trauma recovery program. Amanda Foster used the media attention surrounding the case to launch an ambitious fundraising campaign called Healing Hearts Initiative. The community response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from across the country, allowing the shelter to hire additional staff, upgrade facilities, and implement comprehensive background screening procedures that would prevent another Marcus Webb from ever gaining access to vulnerable animals. Every dark cloud has a silver lining, Amanda told a local news reporter. Webb's cruelty was horrible, but it's led to improvements that will protect thousands of animals in the future. Dr. Chin found herself at the center of the animal welfare community's efforts to reform shelter protocols nationwide. She was invited to speak at conferences, consult with other facilities, and help develop new standards for animal protection in shelter environments. But her heart remained with the animals at Riverside, particularly Max. One afternoon, as Dr. Chin was reviewing Max's progress notes, she noticed a familiar car pulling into the shelter parking lot. Emma and David Rodriguez emerged with their 2 young children, Sophia, 8, and Carlos, 6. The family had been following Max's story in the news and had contacted the shelter about adoption. "We know he's been through trauma," Emma explained to Dr. Chin. "We have experience with rescue animals, and we're prepared to give him all the time and patience he needs to heal." Dr. Chin felt a surge of hope as she watched the Rodriguez family interact with Max. The children sat quietly on the floor of his kennel area, allowing Max to approach them at his own pace. When the young German Shepherd finally worked up the courage to sniff Sophia's outstretched hand, and his tail gave a small wag, there wasn't a dry eye among the watching staff members. "I think," Dr. Chin said softly, "this might be the beginning of Max's real healing." The evaluation process would take time, but for the first time since Webb's abuse began, Max's future looked bright. 2 months after Marcus Webb's sentencing, Max was ready for his new life. The transformation in the young German Shepherd was nothing short of miraculous. The cowering, traumatized puppy who had once flinched at every human movement had blossomed into a confident, loving dog who sought out affection and playtime with equal enthusiasm. Dr. Chin conducted the final evaluation that would determine if Max was ready for adoption by the Rodriguez family. As she watched Max play fetch with 8-year-old Sophia in the shelter's outdoor exercise area, she could barely recognize him as the same dog who had arrived 6 months earlier. "His recovery has exceeded all our expectations," Dr. Chin explained to Emma and David Rodriguez as they observed their potential new family member. "The behavioral modifications we've implemented, combined with intensive socialization therapy, have helped him overcome most of the trauma responses. He'll always need patient, understanding owners, but he's absolutely ready for a loving home. The Rodriguez family had spent the past 2 months preparing for Max's arrival. They had attended training sessions with Dr. Morgan to understand trauma recovery in animals, puppy-proofed their home with special attention to creating safe spaces where Max could retreat if he felt overwhelmed, and even consulted with their children's school counselor to help Sophia and Carlos understand their role in Max's continued healing. "We're not just adopting a dog," David explained to Dr. Chin. "We're welcoming a survivor into our family, and we want to make sure we do everything right." The day of Max's adoption arrived with a mixture of celebration and bittersweet emotions. The entire Riverside staff gathered to say goodbye to the puppy who had become a symbol of resilience and hope. Dr. Chin had prepared a comprehensive care package that included Max's medical records, behavioral notes, and a specially formulated nutrition plan to support his continued growth and development. As the Rodriguez family completed the adoption paperwork, Max seemed to sense that something special was happening. He sat calmly beside Emma, occasionally looking up at her with his bright amber eyes that now sparkled with trust and anticipation rather than fear. "He knows he's going home," observed Jessica Rodriguez, the volunteer who had been working with Max since his early days at the shelter. "Look at his body language, he's relaxed and confident. This is the Max we always knew was inside, waiting to emerge." The moment came for Max to leave Riverside Animal Shelter forever. As the Rodriguez family loaded him into their car, complete with a new collar bearing his name and their contact information, the gathered staff members applauded and wiped away tears of joy. Dr. Chin leaned down to give Max one final goodbye. "You did it, brave boy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears in the spot he loved. "You survived, you healed, and now you get the life you always deserved." Max's tail wagged enthusiastically as he seemed to understand that this was not an ending, but a beginning. Through the car window, he watched the shelter grow smaller as the Rodriguez family drove toward his new life. 3 weeks later, Dr. Chin received a photo that she would treasure forever. Max lying contentedly in a sunny patch of grass in his new backyard, with Sophia and Carlos curled up against his sides, all three of them sound asleep. The accompanying message from Emma read, "Max has found his pack. Thank you for never giving up on him." That same day, Dr. Chin received news that would make Max's victory even more meaningful. Marcus Webb's case had inspired legislative changes that would strengthen animal protection laws statewide. His conviction had become a catalyst for reform that would protect countless animals in the future. Max's story of survival and recovery had touched thousands of people, but more importantly, it had proven that even the most broken hearts can heal with time, patience, and unconditional love. 1 year after Max's adoption, the Rodriguez family home had been transformed into a showcase of what love and patience could accomplish. The once traumatized German Shepherd had grown into a magnificent dog whose gentle nature and protective instincts made him the perfect companion for Sophia and Carlos. Dr. Chin received regular updates from the Rodriguez family, but nothing prepared her for the invitation that arrived in her mailbox on a sunny September morning. "You're invited to Max's first adoption anniversary celebration and therapy dog graduation." Emma Rodriguez had been working with Max for months to help him earn his therapy dog certification. The idea had emerged when they noticed how naturally he connected with children and adults who were struggling with their own trauma. Max's journey from victim to healer had come full circle in the most beautiful way possible. The celebration was held in the Rodriguez family's backyard, decorated with ribbons in Max's favorite colors, blue and gold. Dr. Chin was amazed by the transformation she witnessed. Max, now fully grown and weighing 85 pounds, moved through the party with confidence and grace, greeting each guest with enthusiasm while remaining perfectly calm around the children present. "Watch this," Sophia said proudly, demonstrating the advanced commands Max had learned. He responded to verbal cues and hand signals with precision that would have made any professional trainer proud, but more importantly, his eyes never lost their spark of joy and trust. During the ceremony, Emma shared the impact Max had already made in his new role as a therapy dog. "Last month, Max visited the children's hospital for the first time," she told the assembled guests. "There was a little boy who hadn't spoken since a car accident took his parents. When Max laid his head on the boy's lap and looked up at him with those understanding eyes, the child spoke his first words in 3 months. He said, 'Good dog, Max.'" Dr. Chin felt tears streaming down her face as she listened to story after story of Max's healing presence in the lives of others. The dog who had once cowered in fear was now bringing comfort and hope to children and adults facing their own struggles. Detective Williams, who had also been invited to the celebration, presented Max with a special commendation from the Portland Police Department. Max represents the best of what we hope to achieve in our animal cruelty cases, she said. Not just justice for the victim, but complete recovery and a chance to make the world better. As the sun began to set and the party wound down, Dr. Chen found herself sitting quietly with Max in a corner of the yard. The German Shepherd rested his large head in her lap, and she could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, calm, content, and utterly at peace. "You did more than survive, Max," she whispered to him. "You've taught all of us what resilience really means." Emma approached them with an envelope in her hand. "This is for you," she said to Dr. Chin. "It's from all the families whose lives Max has touched through his therapy work. We wanted you to know that your decision to fight for him has created ripples of healing that will continue for years to come." Inside the envelope was a photo collage showing Max with dozens of children and adults he had helped through his therapy visits, along with letters of gratitude from their families. At the center was a simple message: "Thank you for saving the dog who saved us all." As Dr. Chin drove home that evening, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought Max from a place of terror to a life of purpose and love. Marcus Webb was serving his prison sentence, but Max was free. Free to love, free to heal others, and free to be the magnificent dog he was always meant to be. Justice had been served, but more importantly, love had triumphed over cruelty, and hope had emerged from the darkest circumstances. If Max's incredible journey from victim to hero touched your heart, remember that there are thousands of animals in shelters right now who need our protection and love. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and justice. Like this video if you believe that every animal deserves safety and compassion, and share it with someone who needs to know that even in the darkest moments, hope and healing are possible. Have you ever helped rescue an animal from abuse or neglect? Share your story in the comments below. Let's create a community of animal protectors who ensure that stories like Max's always end with justice and love.